Welcome to Reading Bear. Today we've got a story where OP's controlling parents report their brand new car as stolen, claiming they own it. You won't believe how this backfires. I never thought I'd be writing this story, but here we are. This happened about 2 years ago, and I'm still amazed at how spectacularly my parents managed to shoot themselves in the foot. For context, I was 26 at the time, had been living on my own for 4 years, and had a decent job in IT that paid well enough for me to finally afford my dream car. Growing up, my parents were what you might call traditional when it came to family dynamics. They believed that as long as you were their child, they had a say in major decisions in your life, regardless of your age. This had caused friction between us over the years, especially after I moved out. They constantly tried to insert themselves into my financial decisions, my relationships, and pretty much every aspect of my adult life. The trouble started when I decided to buy a car. Not just any car, mind you, but a pristine 2018 Honda Civic Type R that I'd been saving up for since college. I'd been driving a beat-up old sedan that was literally held together with duct tape and prayers, so this was going to be a major upgrade. I'd done my research, saved every penny I could, and even picked up some freelance work on weekends to boost my car fund. After months of searching, I found the perfect one at a dealership about an hour away. It was in excellent condition, had low mileage, and was priced fairly. I spent weeks going through the financing options, getting my insurance sorted, and making sure everything was perfect. This was going to be the biggest purchase I'd ever made with my own money, and I wanted to do it right. The day I went to pick up the car, I was practically bouncing with excitement. I'd taken the day off work, brought all my paperwork, and even wore a nice shirt for the occasion. The whole process went smoothly. Financing approved, insurance active, and before I knew it, I was driving off the lot in my brand new car. The feeling was incredible. For the first time in my adult life, I felt like I'd really accomplished something significant entirely on my own. I drove straight home to my apartment, parked the car in my designated spot, and spent about an hour just admiring it and taking pictures to send to friends. I was so proud of this purchase. Every payment was going to come out of my bank account. Insurance was in my name, and the title would be in my name once the financing was complete. This was 100% my car, bought with my money, through my credit, with zero help from anyone else. That evening, I decided to drive over to my parents' house to show them the car. I thought they'd be proud of me for making such a responsible purchase and finally upgrading from my old clunker. Looking back, this was probably my first mistake. When I pulled into their driveway, my dad was outside watering the lawn. He stopped what he was doing and walked over as I got out of the car. His first reaction wasn't congratulations or excitement for me. Instead, he immediately started asking questions about the price, the financing terms, the insurance costs, and whether I could really afford it. I tried to explain that I'd been planning this purchase for months and had everything under control, but he seemed skeptical. My mom came outside when she heard us talking, and her reaction was even worse. She started going on about how irresponsible it was to spend so much money on a car when I could have gotten something much cheaper. She kept saying things like, "You don't need something this fancy," and "This is just showing off." I tried to explain that I'd worked hard for this and deserved to treat myself, but neither of them seemed to understand. The conversation took an even stranger turn when my dad started asking about whether I'd consulted them before making the purchase. I reminded him that I was 26 years old, lived on my own, and didn't need permission to buy a car with my own money. This didn't go over well. He started lecturing me about how I was still their child and should have discussed such a major purchase with them first. Things got heated pretty quickly. My mom started saying that I was being disrespectful and that they were only looking out for my best interests. My dad chimed in that I was being financially irresponsible and that they should have had a say in the decision. I pointed out that they hadn't contributed a single dollar to the purchase, so their opinion was irrelevant, which made them even angrier. The argument ended with me driving off in frustration, leaving them standing in their driveway. I figured they'd cool off in a few days and we could move past it. After all, what was done was done. I owned the car, and there was nothing they could do about it. I was wrong. Over the next few weeks, my parents kept calling and texting me about the car. They wanted to know where I was parking it, whether I was keeping up with the payments, if I was driving it responsibly, and a bunch of other questions that, frankly, weren't any of their business. I tried to be patient at first, but their constant interference was getting really annoying. The breaking point came about a month after I bought the car. My parents showed up at my apartment unannounced on a Saturday morning, demanding to see the car and all the paperwork associated with it. They said they wanted to verify that I was handling everything properly and that they had a right to know since I was their son. I refused to show them the paperwork, which led to another huge argument in the parking lot of my apartment complex. My neighbors definitely got an earful that day. My dad kept insisting that as my parents, they had a right to know about my finances and major purchases. My mom was backing him up, saying they were just trying to help and that I was being ungrateful. The argument ended with them making what I thought was an empty threat. My dad said that if I wasn't going to be responsible about the car, they would have to take matters into their own hands. My mom added that they might need to intervene for my own good. I told them to leave and not come back unless they were invited. I didn't hear from them for about a week, which was actually a relief. I figured they'd finally gotten the message and would back off. I should have known better. The next Saturday, I was planning to meet some friends for lunch and then maybe take the car for a nice drive through the mountains. I walked out to the parking lot around noon, and my car was gone. Not just moved, completely gone. My first thought was that it had been stolen, so I immediately called the police. The officer who responded was pretty helpful at first. He took down all the information about the car, asked about where I'd last seen it, and seemed to be taking the theft seriously. Then he asked if I had any enemies or anyone who might want to take my car. I mentioned the ongoing issues with my parents, but didn't think much of it at the time. The officer went back to his patrol car to run some checks, and when he came back, his demeanor had completely changed. He told me that the car had been reported as stolen, but not by me. According to his system, my parents had filed a report claiming that I had stolen their car and was refusing to return it. I was absolutely stunned. I couldn't believe that my own parents had actually called the police and reported my car as stolen. The officer explained that since there was a dispute over ownership, they'd impounded the vehicle and I'd need to sort it out with the department before I could get it back. When I asked how my parents could claim ownership of a car that was financed in my name, with insurance in my name, and that I'd bought with my own money, the officer said that according to their report, they had provided the money for the purchase, and I was just holding the title for them. They claimed it was their car, and I was refusing to give it back. I spent the rest of that Saturday at the police station, trying to explain the situation. I had to wait until Monday to get copies of all my financing paperwork, insurance documents, and bank records showing that all the money for the purchase had come from my accounts. It was incredibly frustrating, especially since I knew my parents were lying through their teeth. The worst part was that I had to pay impound fees for every day the car sat in the police lot, even though I was the legitimate owner and hadn't done anything wrong. By the time I got everything sorted out 3 days later, I was out several $100s in fees and had missed work dealing with the whole mess. When I finally got my car back, I was furious. I'd never been so angry at my parents in my entire life. They had not only lied to the police, but had cost me money and caused me significant stress and inconvenience. I decided it was time to cut contact with them completely. But then I had a better idea. Instead of just going no contact, I decided to give them exactly what they wanted. If they truly believed they owned my car, then they could take full responsibility for it. All of it. I spent the next few days researching exactly how to handle the situation. I contacted my insurance company, my financing company, and even consulted with a lawyer to make sure I understood all my options. What I learned was very interesting. First, I called my parents and told them I was ready to discuss the car situation like adults. I suggested we meet at a neutral location to work things out. They seemed pleased that I was finally coming to my senses and agreed to meet me at a local diner the next evening. At the meeting, I started by acknowledging that they clearly felt they had some ownership of the car. They immediately jumped on this, with my dad explaining how they'd raised me and invested so much in my education and upbringing that they deserved a say in my major purchases. My mom added that they were just looking out for me and wanted to make sure I wasn't making bad financial decisions. I listened patiently and then made my proposal. Since they felt so strongly about owning the car, I would sign it over to them completely. The car, the loan, the insurance payments, everything would become their responsibility. They seemed excited about this at first, until I started explaining what that actually meant. The car loan had about $28, zero remaining on it, with monthly payments of $485. The insurance was another $180 per month. They would also be responsible for maintenance, repairs, registration, and all other costs associated with ownership. And since they had filed a false police report claiming they already owned the car, they should have no problem taking on these responsibilities immediately. My dad's face started to change as he realized what I was proposing. He tried to backtrack, saying that they didn't actually want to own the car. They just wanted me to be more responsible about it. I pointed out that you can't have it both ways. Either they owned it, as they'd told the police, or they didn't. My mom tried a different approach, suggesting that maybe we could work out some kind of shared arrangement. I explained that the financing company doesn't do shared arrangements, and since they'd already established with the police that they were the true owners, it only made sense for them to take full financial responsibility. The conversation went downhill pretty quickly from there. My parents realized they were trapped by their own lies and started getting defensive. My dad accused me of trying to trick them, and my mom said I was being vindictive. I calmly explained that I was simply trying to resolve the ownership dispute they had created by giving them what they claimed they wanted. When they continued to refuse, I made my position clear. They had reported my car as stolen and claimed they were the rightful owners. They could either take full ownership and responsibility for the vehicle, or I would be filing charges against them for filing a false police report and for the costs I'd incurred due to their lies. This got their attention. Filing a false police report is a crime in our state, and I had documentation showing that every aspect of their claim was untrue. I'd paid for the car, I was making the payments, I had insurance in my name, and I had never stolen anything from them. My parents tried to negotiate for a while, but I wasn't budging. I gave them a week to decide, either take full ownership of the car and all associated costs, or face the legal consequences of their false report. They chose to involve other family members, hoping to pressure me into backing down. My aunt called me a few days later, saying that my parents were just trying to help and that I was being ungrateful. My uncle sent me a text about how families should stick together and work things out. Even my grandmother got involved, calling to tell me that I should respect my parents' wishes. I explained the situation to each of them, making it clear that my parents had lied to the police, cost me money, and were now refusing to take responsibility for their actions. Most of them backed off once they understood what had really happened, but a few continued to pressure me to just forget about it and move on. The deadline I'd given my parents came and went, with no response from them. So, I followed through on my threat. I filed a complaint with the police department about the false report, providing all the documentation showing that I was the legitimate owner of the vehicle and that my parents' claims were completely fabricated. I also submitted a claim in small claims court for the impound fees and other costs I'd incurred as a result of their lies. The police took the complaint seriously. They reviewed all the evidence and determined that my parents had indeed filed a false report. While they didn't arrest my parents, they did issue them both citations and fines for filing a false police report. The small claims court case was even more satisfying. My parents showed up with a lawyer, which probably cost them more than the amount I was suing for. Their attorney clearly understood that they didn't have a leg to stand on and spent most of the hearing trying to negotiate a settlement. During the proceedings, my parents had to explain to the judge why they had claimed ownership of a car they had never paid for, never made payments on, and had never been named on any of the associated paperwork. Their explanation was essentially that they felt they deserved some control over my purchases because they were my parents. The judge was not impressed. He ruled in my favor for the full amount I'd requested, plus court costs. He also made some pointed comments about the responsibilities of adults and the inappropriateness of filing false police reports to resolve family disputes. But the real consequence came a few weeks later. My parents' homeowner's insurance company somehow found out about the false police report citations. Apparently, insurance fraud is something they take very seriously, and filing false reports with law enforcement raises red flags about a customer's honesty. Their insurance premiums went up significantly, and they were warned that any future incidents could result in their policies being canceled. This was particularly problematic because they were already paying quite a bit for insurance due to some previous claims. The whole situation also caused problems within our extended family. Word got around about what my parents had done, and not everyone was sympathetic to their side of the story. Several family members expressed that they were disappointed in my parents' behavior and felt that they had crossed a line. My parents made a few attempts to reach out and apologize, but the damage was done. They never offered to pay me back for the costs they'd caused, never admitted that what they did was wrong, and continued to maintain that they were just trying to help me. I kept the car, continued making my payments on time, and never had any other issues with it. It's been 2 years now, and I still love driving it. Every time I get behind the wheel, I remember how satisfying it was to turn my parents' attempted control over me back on them. The funniest part of the whole ordeal was running into my dad at a grocery store about 6 months later. He tried to make small talk, asking how I was doing and whether I was still enjoying the car. When I said I was, he actually had the nerve to suggest that maybe we could work out some kind of arrangement where he could borrow it occasionally for special occasions. I just laughed and told him that if he wanted to drive a nice car, he should buy his own. The look on his face was priceless. I've learned a lot from this experience. The biggest lesson is that some people will try to control you no matter how old you get or how independent you become. My parents couldn't accept that I was an adult capable of making my own financial decisions, so they tried to force their way into a situation where they had no business being involved. Their malicious lie backfired spectacularly because they didn't think through the consequences of their actions. They assumed they could manipulate the situation to their advantage without facing any real consequences. Instead, they ended up with citations, fines, higher insurance premiums, and a damaged relationship with their son. The whole experience also taught me the importance of documentation. Having all my paperwork in order made it easy to prove that my parents were lying. If I hadn't been organized about keeping records, the situation could have been much more complicated. I occasionally get messages from other family members asking if I'm ever going to reconcile with my parents. My answer is always the same. They created this situation with their lies and manipulation, and they've never taken responsibility for their actions or made any effort to make things right. They taught me that some people will use family relationships to try to control and manipulate you. And the only way to deal with that kind of behavior is to set firm boundaries and stick to them. If they had simply been happy for me about my new car purchase, we'd probably still have a normal relationship. Instead, they chose to lie to the police, cost me money, and try to manipulate the situation to their advantage. They got exactly what they deserved, and I have no regrets about how I handled it. The car is still running great, by the way. I've put about 40 miles on it and haven't had any major issues. It's been everything I hoped it would be when I saved up to buy it. And driving it still makes me happy. Every monthly payment I make is a reminder that I accomplished something significant entirely on my own. Despite my parents' attempts to interfere, I sometimes wonder if they tell people the story from their perspective, painting themselves as concerned parents who are just trying to help their ungrateful son. But I know the truth, and more importantly, so do the police, the courts, and their insurance company. The best part is that they can never try this kind of manipulation with me again. They know I won't hesitate to involve the authorities if they cross the line, and they know I have no problem following through on consequences. It's created a dynamic where they have to actually respect my boundaries as an adult, which is something I never thought would happen. Looking back, I'm almost grateful that they pushed things as far as they did. If they had just been mildly annoying about my car purchase, I might have continued to tolerate their controlling behavior for years. Instead, their extreme actions forced me to take a stand and establish clear boundaries that have improved my life significantly. I'm now completely independent from my parents financially and emotionally. I make my own decisions, handle my own problems, and don't have to deal with constant interference in my adult life. The car was just the catalyst for a much bigger change in how I handle their attempts at control. So that's my malicious compliance story. My parents demanded ownership of my car through lies and manipulation, so I offered to give them exactly what they claimed they wanted, full ownership and all the financial responsibility that comes with it. When they realized what that actually meant, they tried to backtrack, but it was too late. Their lies had consequences, and they had to face them. I got to keep my car, they got citations and higher insurance premiums, and I learned that standing up to controlling family members is sometimes the only way to establish healthy boundaries. Everyone got exactly what they deserved in the end. Anyway, thank you for watching. See you again tomorrow.